coming up on the Hurray Show.
In that moment, you have a choice to continue to believe the thing you've always believed or to expand and explore what else could it mean or what
Mhm.
else is beyond this. The body positivity movement and self-love movement kind of like screwed us over a little bit
Wait,
in
tell us
that
how. What do you mean?
it like swung the pendulum a little too far.
Welcome to the Hurray Show. I'm Kimay, your host and undergraduate educator turned confidence coach, here to help you uncover your hooray inside, outside, and underneath. Since 2005, I've been supporting folks in the bra fitting room, where they've revealed it all. And we've transformed not just how they see their bodies, but how they see themselves. Now we're taking that same wholehearted support and bringing it to you. There's no airbrushing here, y'all, of bodies, beliefs, or the beautiful mess of being human. Just real stories, honest conversations, and tools for your self-worth journey. Hooray! Just a heads up, this episode is just part one of my conversation with Teri Hofford. We had so much to talk about that we broke it into 2 parts, so get ready for part 1. Oh my gosh, hooray. I'm so excited. We have a beautiful, beautiful person here today. Teri Hofford is in the house on the Hurray Show. First, let me tell you a little bit about Teri. So, Teri is a body image educator, a photographer, and an author who uses creative experiences and art to encourage folks to challenge their body image biases and beliefs. I can tell you from experience that is true. And Teri is the best-selling author of The Geode Theory, Chipping Away at Body Image, the creator of Body Image Bootcamp, woo woo, and the speaker behind the viral TEDx talk, 5 Reasons You Look Bad in Photos. At the heart of everything Teri does, her mission is to help folks move closer to self and body acceptance. Yes. I actually know this lovely person. I've been to her body image bootcamp. It changed my life. We might even talk about this, how I showed up there first, Teri, in tears, and then we all left with matching tattoos. So stay tuned for that. That was a real experience. But first of all, Teri, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I love podcasts. I love being interviewed. I was like, if I could make this my job, I'd love it.
I
Yeah.
100% agree with you. That's kind of why I created my own, because actually you have such a great podcast, and you doing your work actually inspired me. I never even thought about the solo podcast. I didn't know that was a thing, and you do so many
Yeah.
of them so beautifully. So,
Oh, thanks.
thank you for inspiring me. And I'm
You
and
are
I'm
welcome.
happy to interview you. All right, let's get into our first question. So, as a photographer, you're really creating a vulnerable space for your clients, and a vulnerable safe space, right? And I know that a lot of comments come up about bodies when you are working with people. The same thing happens for me as a bra fitter, and when I train bra fitters, we have this same conversation about, what do you do when folks bring up negative self-talk and in their sessions? So I'm going to dive right in. What are some advice you have for those who are the sacred space holders for other people?
Yeah, so definitely my journey with that has changed since from the time I started to now. Before when I was starting out in photography, I would still I want to create this beautiful positive space for people. And so I used to have a sign on my door that was like, no negative body talk, just shut it down, keep it to yourself. Which I thought was a good thing. But
Yeah.
I realized with the work that I was doing and the space that I was creating for people, that I wasn't giving them space to talk about these things. And then it would inevitably come up either when they saw their photos or maybe put on an outfit that didn't fit the way that they had expected it to. And then I'd have to backpedal a little bit.
Mm.
And so a few years into shooting, I was like, that's not approaching it anymore. How can I create a space for people where I can put my camera down and we can talk about it? And having consultations ahead of time definitely mitigates that. So, talking to clients, asking them questions. Not This is the thing I learned too before. Lots of people have questionnaires that are like, what are you most insecure about? Well, most people are going to give you a huge list
Hmm.
about that. And I remember talking to my mom and she's like, I don't like that question. And I was like, why? And she had said, she's like, because it immediately takes me negative. And if I'm
Oh.
coming into a positive experience, like that, she's like, "I think there's a different way we could phrase it." And the way that I came up with was, "Do you have any concerns about doing a photo shoot?"
Mm.
That way, if the client would take it to body image, then we talk about it. But if they didn't, I didn't wanna assume that they have insecurities. That was the other thing, like, we make these assumptions and biases, based on biases about people, and we just assume that everyone thinks these things instead of asking, like, "Do you have concerns?" Because some people are like, "No, this might be their 20th photo shoot,"
Right,
you
right.
know?
That's
And they may
me.
be like, "Oh, I don't
Yeah.
I just like to show up and be photographed. I don't really like I'm here for fun." And by me taking the lead and bringing them into the negative, they're like, "Wait, I didn't even know that I was supposed to have insecurities."
Oh, man, yeah.
Yeah. So I basically throughout the journey then was just kind of like tweaking it along the way to create a space that worked for my approach, and being curious with my client. The other thing I see in photography is that when people will say like, "Oh, I am afraid of, looking big in a photograph," because that's literally every person for the most part.
Yeah, no assumptions,
Before
but for the most part, that is our
for
culture.
the
Yeah,
most
look
part,
smaller, be
yeah,
thinner,
like,
absolutely.
bigger and older. Those are
Oh,
the 2
wow,
things
yeah.
that most people are
Yep.
afraid to see in a photograph. And before, like, most photographers, and myself included previously, would be like, "Oh my god, no, I will make sure to pose you and light you and flatter." Ugh, I hate that word. Flatter you so that like, again, it sounds good. It sounds good on the surface, but it's not getting to the heart of that feeling.
Mm.
So now when people say, "Oh, I'm afraid of looking big in a photograph," or whatever, I say, "Well, what would it mean if you did?"
Whoa,
And it, like,
whoa,
stops
whoa.
people in their tracks because 'cause
Yeah.
they're like, nobody's asked them, "Well, what would it mean if you did?" Because you might. I don't know how you see yourself. And
What are
so,
some of the
yeah, so
answers you got? Are
yeah.
people like, "That would be bad, I would be ugly, I would be" I don't know, like, what
Yeah.
do they bring up?
Yeah, so well, at first they're like, "Wait, what?" Because they're expecting people socialize as women specifically have grown up to, say something self-deprecating, so our friends will jump in and be like, "No, don't worry about it, you're
Oh
beautiful."
my god,
Uh,
yes.
right? And it's like, that's unhelpful. Ew. We don't need to do that. And so by me asking that question, it literally breaks people's brains because nobody's asked them, "Why are you so afraid of this? Like, why are you afraid of being big or old or whatever?" Like, let's explore that.
Yeah.
Because after photographing, thousands of people, I realized that I could take the best photos on the planet. But if you are dead set on seeing yourself in a certain way, that is all you're going to see when you look at a photo.
Oh my gosh,
And so
yes.
I would rather have that conversation first,
Mm.
so if that happens, you are already prepared mentally about why that might be. And so the answers that people tend to give is, yeah, like, "Oh, well, if I'm fat in a photo or big in a photo, it means that I've let myself go."
Mm.
I'm using air quotes. I always forget when it's a podcast. I'm like, people can't see my
Yeah, for those
wild hand
listening,
gesture.
she's hand gesturing with the air
Yeah,
quotes.
I'm like, there's always lots of air quotes when I talk, so put them in wherever you want. Um, but yeah, so like it'll mean that I'm unattractive. It'll mean that, that yeah, it's bad. And so
Which
then I ask
essentially
the
oh,
next
maybe
question.
that's where you're going. Yes, go for it.
Yeah, exactly. Then I'm like, and what would it mean if you were ugly? Or what would it mean if you let yourself go? And again, now we're getting into the heart of what it is that people are actually afraid
Oh,
of.
yeah.
And ultimately, it boils down to being alone and dying.
Yep,
Essentially, our
yep.
brain just loves to go there. They're super dramatic and they just want to protect us. But when we gloss over it with, "I'm afraid of looking big in a photograph," we think that is the problem. But the
Mm.
problem is all these stories we've been taught about what it means to be that.
Oh
So
my
that was a
gosh.
long-winded answer, but you
No,
get the
it was
point.
beautiful because first of all, I love that you don't like the word flatter. I remember in
Ugh.
my industry, people use flatter all the time, right? Like shapewear and bras that flatter your shape or like give you the perfect shape. Yeah. And I stopped using that word because what it really turned down out to be was like, this product will help you try your best to attain a societal norm of beauty. And I was like, well, hold on a second. Like,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
not what we want to do here with bodies. Additionally, I love your curiosity, Terry. That's one of my favorite things about you. And I remember so much from when I was in Body Image Boot Camp, which is like your signature offering, which I love so much, that we talked about getting curious. And I actually share that a lot with bra fitters. I tell them, we can get curious in there and ask questions and be like, well, like, what does that mean about you? Because that value piece of like what it really, quote, means about me and the stories we're telling ourselves are so much deeper than like, I just will look ugly, right? Because then
Yeah.
if we assign a meaning to that of like, well, then what does that mean? Most of the time, you're right. It comes back to like, well, then I'm not valuable and then I'm not
Mm.
lovable and then I'm going to be alone and then I'll die and be alone. Like,
Yeah, it's like,
if you play that worst case scenario game, which
yeah.
on its own, that's a big fear, right? Like being alone and dying
Yeah.
is not fun. But when we boil it down to like, oh, that's what I'm actually afraid of when I'm afraid of
Yeah.
looking, quote, bad, again, big
Yeah.
air quotes, in my bra or in a picture. So I love that you go there, and I love that your clients, because you're working in that one-on-one way with them in such an intimate space, or you at least were with as a photographer, that it's so ripe for you to have that conversation, and you create such a sacred space for people too. So I think they're able to go there and be like, well, hold on a minute. Why am I hung up on this? Why is this important to me or seemingly important to me? I love that.
Yes, sometimes that curiosity can be confronting for people because they may not be ready for it
Totally.
yet. But that's what I always say, like my clients, like they've been following me
Yeah. They
enough
know what they're in
usually.
for.
They're like ready for the Terry experience
Right.
and like they're like, oh, it's gonna make me really squidgy and uncomfortable. But I know that's the only way to move beyond the way that I've always been, is to feel that discomfort of our brain just like imagine something different, because again, our brains just hate that. So,
Oh my gosh. So you brought up the word squidginess. I
yeah.
love this word so much. And like a lot of your podcasts, like the squidginess of blank, right? So
Yeah.
can you tell us what that means and why this is something that's so important to you?
Yeah. So yeah, my podcast is titled The Squidge or Squidge. Because I considered that space and I always point to or like have my hands on my chest when I talk about it because it's that ego place of where somebody will say something or something might happen to you in your life. And it's like your beliefs are being confronted. Like the things you've always believed about yourself, whether it's like a self narrative or something somebody else taught you or whatever, it's being confronted. And in that moment, you have a choice to continue to believe the thing you've always believed or to expand and explore what else could it mean or what
Mhm.
else is beyond this. And so I say it's in that squidgy space. It's really uncomfortable. It's
Mhm.
really like I always imagine a hermit crab in a really tiny shell. And he's like, I want to get out of here, but this is like comfortably uncomfortable. And so many of us stay in that space.
100%.
Yeah. Right? Because again, our brain loves to know what is happening all the time.
Right.
And so what things will happen and we're like, I should move to a bigger shell. But we'll be like, but maybe not right now.
Yeah, and there's that
But
in between the shell moment too of like, oh, I'm
yeah, that
vulnerable.
is also squidgy because now you're a
So
nudie
vulnerable.
crab trying to get to the other shell. Yeah.
Yes.
You're like, oh God, the elements.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the space where your nervous system isn't ready to catch up or it hasn't caught up to where
Mm.
you want to be. And but that's where when you feel that it's an opportunity. When
Yes,
you feel
preach.
language, it's an opportunity for you to explore, use curiosity. You don't have to change anything right away. You just say, I wonder what this is bringing up in me. Or I wonder why I felt defensive when so and so said this or did this. I wonder what this means about me. And then it's like, ooh, okay, there's some inner child healing that probably has to happen.
Always.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just feel like I don't know if I heard the word squidgy or I just came up with it, but it seems to fit the feeling that I
Yes.
think about when
Yeah, and
like
like that ability to stand in the discomfort and be curious is a skill
mhm,
that I actually think people can get better at. I really do think I know
yeah.
I've gotten better at that. And I think it requires real courage. to be able to
Oh,
stand in the
oh yeah.
discomfort and to be like, "Ooh, growth is happening. This is uncomfortable." I remember asking one of my coaches once, "Will can I ever grow and, like, bypass the discomfort? Like, come on." And she was like, "Unfortunately, no. Growth and change are uncomfortable." And I remember being so angry about this, but
Yep.
also being like, "Oh, so then every time I feel that squidginess, every time I feel that discomfort of like, ooh, I'm being asked to confront an old, maybe outdated narrative that I have about the world, about myself, about whatever, about bodies, or wow, I'm being asked to up level or to change. That's what I recognize it as now. I'm like, oh, opportunity for growth is here. So I just call it a growth
Yeah.
opportunity. That's really what it is.
It's like, "Oh, it hurts so good."
Yeah.
That's what I always think about, like, "Ooh, but also,
Yeah, and like I
yay."
think we all know at least one person, probably several, who will stay in that same hermit crab for that little shell for a long time because it's
Yeah.
comfortable and it's painful to see somebody because they're in pain. Like they've outgrown it. They're trying to bust out. Like their self wants to do it, and they're just like, no, I will stay with what I know. And it's so uncomfortable to watch that person. So, and maybe that's you, somebody listening, right? Like, there's no judgment here. There's nothing wrong or bad about it. It's more like when we have that awareness, it suddenly changes everything to like, oh, I see what I've been doing. I get it. Now do I
Yeah. I
what loving next step do I want to take?
Yeah, I think it comes down like, that's why, like, my approach is what I've kinda coined as the ACE method.
Yeah, tell us
So, like,
about that.
awareness. Yeah, so the first is, like, awareness, so just, like, understanding that something is making you squidgy, like, whether it's a feeling in your body or a thought that keeps showing up, hearing yourself say, "Oh, why am I in this situation again?" Like, "Oh, I've said that, multiple times over the
Mhm.
last few years, like, why do I keep saying that?" Just again, just, like, noticing that something is making you uncomfortable.
Right.
The next part of that is curiosity, of course, which is one of my favorite values. And so it's just instead of judging that you're having that thought, because that the body positivity movement and self-love movement kind of like screwed us over a little bit
Wait,
in
tell us
that
how. What do you mean?
it like swung the pendulum a little too far, where it's like now if you have a negative thought about your body or yourself, you feel bad that you've
Oh,
had a
yeah.
negative thought about your body or self. So it's like what I call a double whammy of shame. But that's where, like, instead of judgment and shame, we can replace that with curiosity
Yeah.
and just say, I wonder why I had that thought, or I wonder why that's coming up now, or what is the context that is creating this? And then once you have your answer to that, then it brings you to empowered action. And I call it empowered action because whether you choose to stay the same or you choose to move, it's a choice. You're empowered in that decision. But at least now it's you choose it. It's not a default. And then shame usually follows when we just fall back into old habits. But, like, I struggle with, like, binge eating, is a huge thing from my younger years because, like, I was always taught well, I believed I was taught that,
Mm.
like, anger and sadness are bad emotions. So, like but obviously I would have them, so I learned to eat to, like, stuff down the feelings.
Mhm.
And, then when in the last 5 years, I'm like, "Oh, we need to look at that a little bit about, like, why do we think anger is inconvenient?"
Mm.
And
Oh my gosh, what a healthy conversation to have with yourself. That's amazing.
yeah, this is where self-portraits have helped me because it, like, causes me to stop and sit down and, like, actually look at it.
Yeah, which,
But
by the way, if you've not witnessed Teri's self-portrait series and, like, these things that she puts out on Instagram, it's stunning and just so raw and beautiful and really, honestly, like, striking. And the words that you choose to go with them. I don't mean to sidetrack us, but, like, this is just, like, my shameless plug for you. Go check out her work. I'm always mesmerized and inspired by it. So,
oh,
side note.
thank
Go
you.
yeah, continue.
Yeah, I don't even remember where I was going with the story, to be honest.
I think
Like,
we
it
were
just, like,
talking
left my
about
brain.
go ahead.
Yeah, what were you? No, I
I
don't
think we were
remember.
talking about how, gosh, I don't remember either.
See, this is what
Like
happens because we went down the rabbit trail.
self-portraits help with confronting anger and,
Yeah,
being a
what is it? Just
bad,
write down.
emotion, and
Emotional
you're yeah,
eating.
emotionally eating.
Oh, that's it, okay.
Well, we
Yeah,
got
there
it.
we are.
We worked it out.
Yeah, okay. I was like, this happens sometimes. I'm like,
Same,
I've gotten too far away from the plot,
same.
but, But essentially with emotional eating, I'm doing it less and less and less, but it still sometimes will happen, especially when my nervous system is like feeling raw and vulnerable, when I'm being asked to up level in my emotional capacity
Mhm.
around anger, sadness, whatever. And so I will fall back into that. But instead of being mad that I did that, like binge ate, whatever, I am able to witness, so become aware that I'm doing it.
Mhm.
And I don't change anything. Like I can choose in that moment because I'm able to witness it and say, like, okay, is this actually helping us right now? And sometimes the answer is yes,
Mm.
because the feeling is too big, right? That I literally don't right in that moment have the capacity to manage that emotion. But because I choose to continue the binge, I don't feel the shame that used to follow the binge. Before I'd be like, "Oh my god, how could I have done that, eaten all that," whatever.
Mm.
Now it just like is like I chose it, and then other times I'll be like, "You know what? No, this is not how. Maybe I'll go for a walk outside, or maybe I'll just distract it with like a different way, journaling or whatever. Like choose a different way when I have the capacity. Sometimes we don't have the capacity,
Mhm.
so we can witness and become aware of the behavior, the thought, whatever, and decide for ourselves in that moment. But at least it's a choice. And if you choose to stay, that's okay too. You've chose it.
Wow, gosh, this like radical acceptance you have of yourself and others is so inspiring. I love it so much. Okay, this is the perfect time to take a little commercial break. I have so much more to ask Terry and actually some of my own stories to share. So stick around. We'll be right back after this. Hey, pro fitters and bra boutique bosses. You know a good fit changes everything, but with a changing industry and customer trends, how do you keep up? The Fitters Formula is my signature training with everything about bra fitting that I've learned in my 20 years in the bra biz. It'll help you nail every fitting, boost sales, and keep customers coming back again and again. Plus, it's more than a course. It's a supportive community that gets you in this very unique line of work. Join us at hurraycommunity.com/FF and let's fit together with accuracy and empathy. Hooray! Okay, we're back from that commercial break, back with Terry. Here we go. Okay, we have to talk about Body Image Boot Camp because it was
Yeah,
one of the most life-changing experiences I ever had. Just like gonna put that not so lightly.
I'll take that.
And so I remember signing up for Body Image Boot Camp for a couple of reasons. One is because I've always been inspired to discuss body image and what creates our biases and where those stories come from. Because as a bra fitter, I've been dealing with bodies for now 20 years. And that was actually one of my big um, growth opportunities in my life was to confront my own body image when I started as a fitter at 20 years old. And I went from thinking I had to match this airbrush perfection in magazines to seeing
Yeah.
real human bodies in the fitting room, which by the way, I always tell people like everybody should be a bra fitter for 1 week in New York City. It's just so illuminating. And it really changed things for me. And then I also realized, oh, I can help other people start to change that narrative for themselves too, and really ask themselves, who do they really see in the mirror? It was a really profound time for me. And so unexpected because it was just a college job to get me through school, and now here I am 20 years
Now it's
later.
your like whole career and like what you're known for.
Who
Yeah.
knew, you know? Who knew? But the body image part of it still stuck with me, and I had relatively a similar body for a long time, maybe fluctuated up a couple pounds. I obviously aged, but then I moved to Oklahoma from New York City, and I gained like 40 pounds. So big heads up to everybody here. I'm talking weight, and that changed a lot of things for me. And I was so used to loving and respecting the body that I had that I didn't
Mhm.
even think about loving and respecting the body that might be, nor did I ever think about going back in time. So I actually started stretching out. And I talk about loving my body. I know that's not for everybody. I know neutrality is such an important step for so many people, but I was actually in a really loving relationship with my body. And then it shifted and I was like, who's this? What body is this? And so I started expanding my relationship with my body and appreciating it, loving it, adoring it, just being kind to it, just being like a good friend to it, like really treating it like a friend. And I would go back in time to when I was 17 and extend love to that body. not hating it or being jealous of it or any of the things. I think a lot of us look back at pictures and are like, God, if I only had those hips or whatever, right? But just like extending love to it and acceptance, and then going forward in time to like me at 75, me hopefully after many children, right? Like me after all these other changes of age and body and whatever, maybe me after illness, like just really extending it and then coming back to the present moment and being like, oh yeah, and this body too, and this one right here today, not the one 10 years ago, not the one in 10 pounds, not the one after 10 babies, but the one today. And that really, I can feel it in my body right now, like the tingles. That really shifted a huge narrative for me. So I'm curious for you if you're comfortable sharing your own body story, or if you're comfortable telling us, like, if somebody else has kind of been on this journey for a while and their body changes, what do we do? How do we, I mean, obviously the ACE method is your go-to for like just having that awareness, being curious, and then taking empowered action. But like, what's advice that you have for them? It's kind of asked you two questions, so answer either one.
Yeah, well, I'll start first. Like for my body journey is like when I was younger, I was always the biggest kid in my class. I was also like highly sensitive. So I was an easy target for bullying in my school. But I always said like I had one of the girls that used to bully me because it was a small school. So there was like, four girls that would bully me, and obviously I still know who they are today.
Oh my.
And she reached out to me on Facebook because I'd made a post about being bullied. And she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry if I was one of the people that did that." I'm like, "Obviously, you probably know, otherwise you wouldn't be doing this." But I told her, I was like, "You know what? I think that people pick on, or the people that are picked on, and sometimes are the stronger ones because they don't feel the need to bully anybody else. Like they just like take it,
Oof.
but they don't continue it on."
Oh my gosh, that was profound.
That was
Yeah.
kind of my passive aggressive, fuck you. But but essentially, so that was like my childhood. But I also had something that not a lot of people have, and that is a mother who was not concerned with her body
Wow.
or diet culture.
Yeah,
Like
that's
she was
uncommon.
yeah, and so, like, I would go home crying from school, like, every day, and this is probably also where I learned that you always have a choice. My mom sat me down, and instead of telling me, "No, you're so beautiful," and, like, "Let me go talk to those kids' parents," she's like, "I knew that I had to empower you." And she sat me down, and she didn't tell me what to do. She said, "Listen, you have two choices. You can choose to change who you are to try to fit in, but chances are pretty good they'll just find something else to pick on you for. Or you could choose to be yourself. You may not have a lot of friends, but the friends you have won't even care what your body looks like, and they'll be probably your friends for life." And to this day,
Oh.
my best friend is still my best friend from grade 6.
Oh
So,
my gosh, and they'll
um,
like you for you, not because you're trying to fit
yeah,
into a mold.
exactly. You
Oh
don't
my
have a
gosh, what
specific
advice,
body.
Mom, thank you.
Right? Yeah, and so, like, that was a pivotal life-changing moment for me because she didn't tell me choose this or this. She just said, "If you do this, this is maybe the outcome. If you do this, this is maybe the outcome. Both are uncomfortable, so you get to choose which one you want." And for me, I decided to go the authentic route because that just seemed easier for me, to be honest. I was like, "Oh, that's more in alignment with what I want." So
And you were
through
how
the
old
rest
when you made this
yeah, I
empowerment?
was in grade 6, so that was, like, 10. And I will
Outrageous.
say I also journaled a lot, like, even then, I was, like, starting to journal around grade 4, so I had this, like, self-awareness with myself. I always used writing. In
Wow.
grade 4, I wrote a story, like, to kinda transmute the bullying. It was called The Little Fat Fairy, and my grandma was like, I cried when I read it because it was just about how this little fat fairy was being bullied by the other fairies,
Oh
and
my god.
yeah. But anyway, so that was my childhood and, like, up until grade 6, and then after that, after I had that conversation with my mom, I started to, like, lean into the things that I was good at, sports, music, and I didn't even think twice. If people were talking about me, I didn't really care too much, and I saw my body more as I still like, the body image insecurity was still there, it didn't go away. I still knew I would never be the pretty popular one, or I would probably never have the boyfriend. Like, there was all those narratives that I had been taught that were still there, but I just kept myself so busy that I didn't care. until my 20s. And then I moved to Busan, South Korea, where I was a teacher for 2 years. And while I was there, because the food is so different than Canada,
Yeah.
I just started to lose weight naturally. Like I was walking everywhere. I was eating, rice and meat basically and beans. And I was like, oh, I'm moving in, like I'm finally going to have what the world has told me I should want.
Mm.
And unfortunately, I was also incredibly lonely.
Mm.
And so that loneliness kind of fueled trigger warning for orthorexia, like an eating disorder, where
Whoa.
I was so dedicated to bodybuilding at the time that I would like monitor what I ate. I would exercise like multiple times a day. I was taking martial arts. I was bodybuilding in the day. And like that was my whole focus because I was so lonely that this gave me something to focus on and control. And I lost over 100 pounds. And now
Wow.
I was getting all these compliments. And my mom says, she's like, when we came to visit you, I didn't even recognize you in the airport. And when I look now, like I'd gotten actually probably too low for my frame, that I looked a bit like a bobblehead. but but I was just like, I still wasn't happy.
But you said you were
Like
getting
exactly.
compliments though.
Oh, yeah. Like I love that.
Yeah.
I could wear clothes. I go shopping in different stores. Love that. And so it was like there was this fake confidence that I had,
Yes.
but this inner hate. It was worse then when I was in my smaller body than when I was in a bigger body.
Oh, wow.
And it was worse then because I was so afraid. What if I gain weight back?
Oh my
All
gosh,
these
yeah.
compliments go away. All of this changes. Everything goes away, right? And then I moved back to Canada, and unfortunately, that was there was a bit of a wake-up call when a few months after I got back, my dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer.
Oof.
And for those that don't know, basically people that get pancreatic cancer, they essentially starve to death. Yeah, it's not great. But so here I was watching my dad, who desperately wanted to eat but couldn't. And I purposefully was starving myself to look a certain kind of way.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, that's squidgy.
Like,
Right? That I was like, oh, that's very squidgy. And then it doesn't just change overnight like that, because
Sure.
that's not how brains work, of course, nor in your 20s. Your brain's still not even fully formed.
Right.
Anyways, but then I was like, oh, like I've lost all this weight. I went to work for a freaking weight loss company after my dad passed away. Yeah, for real.
Oh
And
my gosh.
but what I love, here's the thing. There was two things that came out of that. Number one, I loved coaching people. I loved, and the interesting thing was, even though I had lost all that weight, I was still the biggest one in that business. And they said they had hired me because I looked normal, like the clients. And I was like, thank you.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I would get clients coming in, but they also would appreciate that I didn't look super thin.
Sure, yeah.
Or because I still had really thick thighs, and I was still built like, I call it a ruler shape. Like my composition didn't change, And that I realized I loved working one-on-one with people, and I loved teaching. I loved learning everything I could about nutrition and then sharing that. I loved learning about the things that we were, all of that. So that was awesome. And
That
then,
makes so much
but
sense for like what you do now and who you
right?
are. That
Yeah,
makes so
like
much
it's
sense. Yeah.
and part of it also was learning how to run a business, because we had to
Mhm.
do all the marketing, all the pitching, all the lunch and learns. Like we had to set that up, and then I became a manager. So I learned a lot about sales also. I hadn't really done sales before that job.
So
And I was
valuable.
really good because I was authentic about it
Yes.
at the
Oh
time.
my gosh, everybody please hear
Until
that. Like sales,
yeah.
it's just sharing with authenticity and inviting people to sell.
Yeah.
Love that.
But then something happened,
Oh
and
gosh.
I had heard at a manager's meeting that we relied on 80% of our clients to fail for our profits.
What?
Yeah. And they're like, this is standard for like weight loss companies. This is standard for the diet industry, that we rely on our clients to fail so they become repeat customers.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like the healthcare industry, by the way. Huge side note. Continue. I'm upset. Continue.
Yeah. But that was kind of like but then I couldn't do it authentically
Yeah,
anymore.
fair.
Because
Yeah,
that went
fair.
against I was like, wait, wait, wait. I thought we were like actually helping. It was like when you're in a cult and all of a sudden you're like, oh no,
Oh
I'm
no.
in a cult.
Oh my
You're like, how do I
no.
get out of
Drinking
this?
the Kool-Aid. No.
Yeah. The other thing was they were really good at it was very much like a cult or abusive relationship where they'd say like, "Oh, Terry, you shouldn't wear skirts because your thighs are too big or your clients don't want to see that." I would wear skirts more because clients would be like, "I love that you wear pencil skirts and you have thick thighs like me." I was like, "Yeah, right."
This
Yeah.
is
It was but
bizarre. This is bizarre. I know
yeah.
you got out of there, but there's still a part of me in this story right now that was like, please tell me you left.
Yeah. Well, that was like that last like through. I was like, I gotta get out of here. But then obviously after I left that, and then life took over, whatever. And then I started building my photography business, and that became my priority. And unfortunately, body image, even if you're like okay with how you look or whatever, body image goes deeper than just the image piece. It goes into disregarding your body's needs altogether.
Mm,
And my body image shifted from how I looked to how I worked, in that I would still override my body's needs for food, water, rest. And as a result, as I was aging and disregarding my body's needs, I started to gain weight quite rapidly. In fact, I gained probably like 70 pounds in about 3 to 4 months.
wow.
And of course, being already in a bigger body, the medical industry was like, well, just lose weight.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, "Oh, I think something else is happening here."
Yeah.
Uh, and so that like I went through like I've been in the smaller body, I've been in the bigger body, I'm in the biggest body I think I've ever had. Even now, I don't even know. I kind of plateaued at some point. And the whole way through, I realized that my body is my friend, like
Mhm.
you said. Like
Mhm.
the only way to get through your body's just a science, actually. It doesn't have to be your friend. It literally is just a biological organism. And
It's
it
just a
literally
body.
has,
It's like that. I
yeah,
remember in body image boot camp, this is like this neutral, it's literally just a body. Like these are just thighs. This is just an arm.
it has one job to do, and it's to keep you alive as long as
Exactly.
possible.
Exactly.
But we've been taught to put so many expectations, especially those of us socialized as women, now more men, but before it was definitely mostly women, about how your body should look versus how it does, because that's just the way it does because of genetics.
Right.
So because I've been through the whole thing, that helped me realize that, oh my God, it doesn't matter what size you are. A, you can hate your body at any size. And B, you will not embrace your body, regardless if you lose weight, get surgery, whatever, if you do not love yourself.
Oof. Oof.
And I would say I've never met somebody who truly loves who they are as a person and hates their body.
I remember you saying
Those,
that in body image boot camp, and I think you even said it in a slightly different way where it said something like, you if you if you hate your body, what you're actually telling me, or what I know is also true, is that you actually hate yourself. And I was like,
yeah.
oh my gosh. So like the things I said to my body, the expectations that we put on it, like you said, like, no, we don't need to pee, we don't need to rest, we need to eat, like just keep freaking going, right? Like that's actually how we feel and how we treat ourselves. And I know
Yeah.
there's a distinction between the body and the self, but that overlap of like how you treat this thing is how you treat that thing is so true, Terry.
Yeah, and I think that's like when people can get themselves to that place where they realize, like, first you have to do the separation to say, like, okay, the body's over here. We just need to put it over here for a minute.
Yeah.
So you can look at it as a body and work on over here. What do you think about yourself? What are all the identities you've been carrying? And who do you think you have to be? Like, who taught you that? All those questions, all that
Yeah.
good stuff. And then once you've worked through that, then we can come back to the body and say, all right, I think I'm ready to go on this journey with you. So what do you now need from me so we can keep moving forward? And that looks like, okay, I'm going to trust you when you say you're hungry, even though I've been taught from the time I was 4 years old to eat 3 square meals a day
Right.
at certain times. Or I'm going to trust that when you want to have a nap at 2 in the afternoon, that I'm going to have a nap, even if it goes against the hustle culture that I've like been so aligned with.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. But I think that it's like all these stages have to happen where it's like, It's not going to happen overnight. I think it's the biggest thing. So we humans love to put ridiculous expectations on
Yeah.
themselves. I'm like, well, I should be able to just love myself today because I decided that. No, again, you have to literally create new neural pathways in your brain. You're literally fighting against like 25 plus years of a really deep, entrenched core memory about your body. It's going to take practice and time.
Yeah.
And like people need to set more appropriate expectations to that it never goes away.
Right.
You just learn to manage those thoughts better, or you become more resilient. So they happen less,
Right.
but they don't ever fully stop.
Yeah, and because our body changes, you'll have new
Yeah.
narratives about it, like this age, this size, this
Yeah.
this health, whatever. Oh my
Ability.
gosh. Ability, exactly. Woo! I loved this conversation with Teri so much. Here is a great Q&A with Kim A. Oh my goodness. It's time, y'all, for another edition of Q&A with Kim A. This brilliant question comes from somebody at our listeners' lounge of the Hurray Show, and she asks, what are your thoughts about using a bra back extender rather than purchasing a new bra? And then put anonymous. Do not worry, your identity is safe over here. Asking about bras is a very personal thing, but yet so many of us wear them. So an extender is, you know, that little back part of your bra if you have hooks and eyes. You can basically buy an extender that has additional hooks and eyes. You can just hook right onto the ones you already got. And then it will give you, instead of maybe 3 columns, maybe you'll have 6 columns now across. And this just makes the band of your bra longer while the cup remains the same. There are many pros and cons to this, and I don't even have an extender on hand because it's not my favorite tool to use. However, it can be really great for certain people or certain occasions. So I heard you say rather than buying a new bra, which means to me that you already have bras that maybe fit at one time and now they don't, and you're concerned is my body going to change again? Am I going to go back to the size? Bras are expensive. Do I invest? So in that case, do I think it's going to give you the best fit to use an extender? If I'm being completely honest, as your favorite bra fitter, I'm going to say no. But I also want to make sure you're wearing something that's comfortable today. So if your body has changed and I think it's going to change back, I would just keep the bras that you have and maybe go invest in just 2 or 3 lower cost bras for now. I say this for anybody whose body is changing, actually, is just invest in 2 or 3 basics just to get you through. And if in 6 months, 9 months, your body hasn't changed, maybe you go invest in a few more. If it has changed again, then okay, you either go back to the size you were wearing, or if it changed additionally in the other direction, you go invest in new bras. That's my suggestion because I want to make sure that you're wearing something that fits great and it really feels good. That said, I also understand we're all on a budget, so if you just need to do it to get you through and see and test a size, you know what? Go for it. I also want to say this is your body and your bra, so you truly get to decide whatever you want to wear. But the other 2 reasons I think that it could be really great to wear an extender is during maternity or nursing, because the body is changing on a regular basis. In fact, a lot of nursing bras actually come with 6 hooks in the back already. And mama, you do not have time to run out and try on new bras or order a bunch of bras. So in a pinch, yes, you can definitely do that. And it's a very temporary time in your life. I still want you to feel supported, but I do think it is a time where you could maybe fudge it a little bit. And then the other time where it's great to use an extender is when the size that you need literally just isn't made. So I'm thinking fuller bands, smaller cup. That person does not have a lot of options. And if there's a particular style that you just love, the front of the bra just works perfectly with an outfit, whatever, and they don't actually have the band size that you need, but you can get a cup size that fits, then I would add the extender. I'm telling you this off the record because as a bra fitter, I want you to wear something that's actually designed for your body and is actually going to fit. But at the same time, I also know how complicated and difficult it can be to invest in bras or find things in your size or get things during a time when you're just in a pinch. So I'm a human too, boo. I get it. Okay, I hope that answers your question or at least gives you something to think about. If you have a question too, please let me know. And of course, share this with someone who needs to say hooray. Okay, this was just part 1 of this amazing conversation with Teri Hofford. Stay tuned for part 2.
Hooray! That's a wrap for this edition of The Hurray Show. If you love this episode, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a dose of hooray in their day. Come on over and say hi at HurrayKime on Instagram and grab the show notes with any links to what we discussed, shopping codes, or more information on our guests at hurraykime.com/podcast. I hope today's episode helped you say hooray inside, outside, or underneath, or maybe all three. Either way, thanks for spending some time with me. Until next time.